You're not single because you're broken. You're not single because you're too much or not enough, or because the right person just hasn't shown up yet. You're single because of a pattern, a specific, identifiable, changeable pattern, and nobody has ever named it clearly enough for you to see it. That's what this video is. I'm not going to tell you to love yourself first or stop looking and it'll happen. That advice isn't wrong exactly. It's just so vague it does nothing. What I want to do is go several layers deeper. I want to show you the actual psychological mechanics of why smart, caring, genuinely lovable people stay stuck in the same loop. Dating wrong, settling, pulling back right when something real starts to form, or just not dating at all and wondering why. Because the reason you're still single isn't luck. It's not timing. And it's definitely not fate. It's something that's been running in the background of your mind for years. And once you see it, really see it, you cannot unsee it. Let me describe something you've probably felt, but never said out loud. You're smart. You're self-aware. You have a lot to offer. And yet, when it comes to love, you feel like you're playing a game where everyone else knows the rules except you. Maybe you keep attracting people who are emotionally unavailable. You get close to someone, start to feel something real, and then, almost like clockwork, things fall apart, or they pull away, or you do, and you sit with that familiar hollow feeling, wondering what went wrong. Again, or maybe it's different for you. Maybe you've been so hurt before that you've stopped putting yourself out there entirely. You convince yourself you're focusing on yourself, which is sometimes true, but if you're honest, and you have to be honest here, there's also a part of you that's terrified, not of being alone, of being vulnerable and getting it wrong again. Picture this. Sarah is 27. She's in therapy, reads books on emotional intelligence, has a solid career, great friends. On paper, she's exactly the kind of person who should be in a happy relationship. But every guy she gets close to eventually tells her some version of the same thing, that she's hard to reach, that she's warm but walled off. She hears it so often she starts to believe she's just an independent person. What she doesn't realize is that her independence isn't a personality trait. It's armor. And it was built a long time ago for a very good reason. That just stopped being useful. That's not a story about Sarah being difficult. That's a story about a nervous system doing exactly what was taught to do. Comment prompt. Here's a question I want you to sit with, and feel free to answer in the comments. When something real starts to develop with someone, what's your first instinct? Do you lean in, or do you start looking for reasons it won't work? Because that instinct, that's data, and it's going to tell you everything. The pain point isn't that love is hard to find. The pain point is that you are, without knowing it, actively participating in why it keeps slipping through your fingers. Not because you're flawed, but because you were wired by your history, your family, your past relationships to expect a certain kind of outcome. And your brain, being the pattern recognition machine that it is, keeps delivering that outcome reliably, repeatedly, until you understand why. Here's where it gets interesting and a little uncomfortable. Your brain doesn't want you to be happy. That's not a cynical statement. It's neuroscience. Your brain wants you to be safe. And safe is defined not by what's good for you, but by what's familiar. The human brain runs on prediction. Every single second, it is taking in information and comparing it to past experience to predict what happens next. This is the brain's entire job. It is not optimizing for joy. It's optimizing for survival through pattern recognition. So when you grow up in an environment where love comes with strings attached, where affection is inconsistent or earned through performance, or only given when you're not too much, your brain stores that. It catalogs it, and it says, this is what love feels like. This is normal. This is safe because it's known. Then when you're 25 or 28 or 32, and you meet someone who is genuinely kind, consistent, and available, your brain flags it as unfamiliar. And unfamiliar registers neurologically as unsafe. Here's the fact that should stop you cold. Research from the University of Toronto found that people who experienced insecure attachment in childhood are significantly more likely to unconsciously recreate those same dynamics in adult relationships. Not because they want to suffer, but because the brain interprets emotional familiarity as a form of safety, even when that familiarity is painful. Read that again. Your brain can be more attracted to what hurts you than to what heals you. Not because you're masochistic, but because what hurts is known and known feels safe. This is a counterintuitive truth that changes everything. If someone who is genuinely healthy and available feels boring to you, that's not a chemistry problem. That's a calibration problem. Your nervous system's set point for what feels like love is off. And that is not a character flaw. It is a fixable, learnable, rewirable pattern. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Carl Jung, Psychological Reflections. We need to dismantle some things. Because before you can build something true, you have to clear out what was never true to begin with. The lie number 1, you'll know when it's right because you'll feel it instantly. The truth, chemistry is not a compass. Chemistry is a signal. And in many cases, that initial electric pull, that I can't stop thinking about them feeling, is your nervous system recognizing a familiar pattern, not identifying a healthy match. Slow, steady. Growing attraction is often how real love actually builds. The people who make the best partners are sometimes the ones who don't light you up in the first 5 minutes, but who are still interesting to you 6 months in. Instant fireworks can mean chemistry. They can also mean my attachment system just found something that rhymes with my wound. The lie number 2, if it's meant to be, it won't require work. The truth, every relationship worth having requires work. Not the exhausting kind where you're constantly managing someone's moods or shrinking yourself to fit, but the intentional, honest, growth-oriented kind. The idea that real love is effortless was sold to you by romantic comedies and has caused immeasurable damage. Connection requires communication. Communication requires vulnerability. Vulnerability requires courage. None of that is effortless. All of it is worth it. The lie number 3, being single this long means something is wrong with you. The truth, singleness is not a verdict. It is a status. Those are not the same thing. Some people have been in relationships continuously since they were 16 and have never once been alone long enough to figure out who they actually are. Some people who are still single at 29 have done more inner work, developed more self-knowledge, and have more to bring to a relationship than people who've been coupled their entire adult lives. The question is not how long you've been single. The question is what you've done with the time. The most common form of despair is not being who you are. Soren Kierkegaard, The Sickness Unto Death. I want to talk about attachment theory, because if there is one concept in all of psychology that most directly explains why good people stay stuck in bad relationship patterns, it's this. Attachment theory was developed by British psychiatrist John Bowlby in the 1950s and 60s, and later expanded by researcher Mary Ainsworth. The core idea is this. The relationship you had with your primary caregivers in childhood creates an internal working model, essentially a blueprint, for how you expect relationships to work in adulthood. There are 4 main attachment styles. Secure, where you're generally comfortable with intimacy and independence. Anxious, where you crave closeness but are terrified of abandonment. Avoidant, where you value independence so highly that emotional intimacy feels threatening. And anxious avoidant, sometimes called disorganized, where you simultaneously want closeness and fear it, which creates an almost constant internal conflict. I wanted to pause here. Actually stop the video if you need to. Ask yourself, when I'm in a relationship, do I tend to chase or do I tend to retreat? Do I get clingy when someone pulls back? Or do I start pulling back the moment things get serious? Because the answer to that question tells you almost everything about your attachment style, and your attachment style is the single biggest predictor of your relationship patterns. Here's a real-life example. Imagine 2 people, Marcus, who is anxiously attached, and Jess, who is avoidantly attached. When they start dating, the anxious-avoidant dynamic creates what therapists call the push-pull cycle. The more Marcus leans in, the more Jess pulls back. The more Jess pulls back, the more anxious Marcus becomes, which makes him lean in harder, which makes Jess pull back further. This isn't a bad match. It's 2 nervous systems in a familiar dance, each triggering the other's core wound. And without awareness, they will either exhaust each other or stay stuck in that cycle indefinitely, both privately wondering why love has to feel this hard. The good news, and this is critical, attachment styles are not destiny. They're patterns. And patterns, once identified, can be changed. The wound is the place where the light enters you. Rumi, the Masnavi. This is the part you're going to want to screenshot. I call this the clear framework. 5 steps to break out of the pattern and start building the kind of love you actually want. Step 1. Catalog your patterns. Before you can change anything, you have to see it. Take a mental inventory of your last 3 significant relationships or situationships. What did they have in common? Not just personality traits. Dig into the emotional dynamic. Were you always the one giving more? Were you always waiting to be chosen? Were you always a little bit in love with someone's potential rather than their reality? Write it down. The pattern is in the data. Step 2. Locate the origin. Once you've identified the pattern, ask, where did I learn this? Most of our relationship patterns are not random. They were formed in response to specific experiences. A parent who was emotionally inconsistent, a first love who was critical, a family system where needs were dismissed. You're not looking for someone to blame. You're looking for a root, because roots can be readdressed. Step 3. Examine your nervous system responses. Start paying attention to your physical reactions in dating contexts. When someone is kind and consistent, do you feel calm or slightly bored? When someone is hot and cold, do you feel anxious or weirdly alive? Your body is keeping score, and those physical cues reveal your calibration. The goal is to learn to distinguish between nervous system familiarity and genuine connection. Step 4. Actively date toward discomfort. This is not about forcing yourself to be with people you feel nothing for. It's about giving consistent, stable, emotionally available people a longer runway than your nervous system naturally wants to give them. If your pattern is chasing unavailability, the antidote is not willpower, it's exposure. Spend time with people who are kind. Let feel a little unfamiliar. Stay curious. You might be surprised what grows. Step 5. Repair your relationship with vulnerability. Most people who struggle in relationships don't struggle because they're incapable of love. They struggle because they're terrified of what it costs. Vulnerability is the price of admission for real intimacy. You don't have to throw your walls down overnight, but you do have to start noticing when you're hiding and practice, just practice, letting one person see one real thing about you. Then another. That's how trust is built. That's how intimacy is built. One small, honest moment at a time. Comment prompt. Which of these 5 steps feels the most uncomfortable for you right now? Tell me in the comments, because discomfort is almost always where the work is. Knowledge without a new perspective doesn't stick. So here are 3 specific mindset shifts. From the old story you've been telling yourself to the true story. Mindset shift 1. Old thought. I keep attracting the wrong people. New thought. I keep being attracted to a familiar feeling. The person isn't the pattern. I am, and I have the power to change what I'm drawn to. This is not self-blame. It's self-agency. The moment you stop casting yourself as a victim of your love life and start seeing yourself as the author of it, the whole game changes. You stop waiting to be chosen and start making conscious choices. Mindset shift 2. Old thought. If I have to work on myself before I can be in a relationship, I must be too damaged to date. New thought. Working on myself isn't a prerequisite to love. It's something I do alongside love, in partnership with it, throughout my entire life. Nobody arrives at a relationship complete. We become ourselves partly through the experience of being known by another person. The idea that you have to be fully healed before you deserve love is a story that keeps the most self-aware people the most isolated. Growth and connection aren't sequential. They're parallel. Mindset shift 3. Old thought. Something is fundamentally wrong with me because I'm still single. New thought. I'm still single because I've been operating from an unconscious pattern. Now that I can see the pattern, I can change it. And changing it is the most powerful thing I can do. Singleness is not a life sentence. It is a starting point. Right now, in this moment, you have more information about yourself than you've ever had. That information is not a burden. It is a foundation. Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. Aristotle, Nicomachean Ethics. Here's what I want you to take away from this. You are not broken. You are not cursed. You are not running out of time. You are a person who was shaped by experiences you didn't choose, and those experiences created patterns you didn't know you had. That's not a tragedy. That's the human condition. Every single person walking around on this planet is carrying some version of the same story. The ones who found love and the ones who haven't yet. The difference between people who break the pattern and people who stay in it is not luck. It's not timing. It's not even how much therapy they've had. It's whether they were willing to really look at themselves without flinching, and then do the work, one uncomfortable step at a time. You watch this video to the end. That already tells me something about you. It tells me you're the kind of person who would rather understand than stay comfortable. That is the most important ingredient. You're not behind. You're not too late. You're exactly where the work begins. If any part of this resonated with you, if you recognize yourself in something I described, I want to hear about it in the comments. Tell me which section hit hardest. What pattern do you see in yourself? Your comment might be the one that helps someone else feel less alone. If you found this useful, subscribe, because I make videos like this every day going deep into the psychology of love, self-worth, and why we do what we do in relationships. Not surface-level advice. Real frameworks. Real science. Real conversations. And in the next video, we're going into something I've had so many requests for, attachment anxiety. What it actually is, why it feels so addictive, and the step-by-step process to heal it. You don't want to miss that one. I'll see you there.